Hello everyone, welcome to AJ Programming Solutions. So in today's video we are going to start with the book management application or a library management application. So here very first we are going to cover these 5 operations. First one is to add the book, then show all books, after that to show available books, and then borrow a book and return a book. So after that we are going to perform some validations on the fields. Okay, for example we have the fields as a book id or the book title or author. So for each and every field we are going to perform the validations. So for that we are going to use a pattern class in Java. Okay, after that whenever we are displaying all the book details, that time we are going to use a format method so that our details of the book should be displayed in some format. Okay, and then we will see how we can display the text in some different colors. Okay, so these are some points which we are going to cover in today's video. Okay, now let's run the application and see how our application will look like. So as soon as we run the application, we will see this menu where we have these 5 operations and the exit one. Okay, so currently we don't have any book added in our library. So if we enter a choice as a 2, which is to show all the books, we are going to get a message there are no books available in the library. Okay, now let's add some book in the library. So to add the book we have a choice as a 1. So here we have to enter all the book details. So here we are getting the message enter book id. If we enter any book id, then here we will get some message like sorry, please enter valid book id, because we have provided the validation for the book id, and that validation is book id should be in digit from 1 to 4 digits. Okay, so let's enter some valid book id. Let's suppose 23. Then author name, if we enter the author name like this, then we will get again the message please enter a valid author, because author name should be a character, it should not contain any digit or a special symbols. Okay, so here let's enter the author as James, and the title, for the author and title we have provided the same validation, so it will not allow any digits. So here also we have to enter a characters. Okay, then publish year also we have provided the validation. So see here our validation is working perfectly fine, and here let's enter the year as a 2022. So once we entered all the details, we will get a message book added successfully. Okay, so here whenever we are adding the book first time in the library, that time by default the status of the book will be available, and as soon as some person will borrow the book from the library, then automatically the status of that particular book will become not available. Okay, we are going to see that. So now we have added one book. If you enter choice as a 2, you can see the details of that book. Okay, so same way we can add the book and show all books. Then show available books means let's suppose in our library we have 10 books. Out of 10, 3 books are already borrowed by some students. So currently in your library you have 7 books which are available to borrow. Okay, so that way we can see available books. Then how to borrow a book. If we enter a choice as a 4, then here we have to enter the book id which you want to borrow. Currently we have one book id 23, so let's enter 23 here, and as soon as we enter the valid book id, we will get the message that book is borrowed successfully, and here you can see the details of that book. So here if you can see, automatically the status should have become not available. Okay, now if you enter a choice as a 2 to show all the book details here, then you can see that the status is become not available. Okay, now we can return the book as this book is borrowed by students. So if you enter a choice as a 5, and here you have to enter a book ID. If you enter any book ID, it will give us a message we cannot return this book because this book is not available in our library. Okay, now let's enter the 5 and the 23 as a book ID. So that book was borrowed by the student, so we have successfully returned that book, and now the status of that book become the available. If you enter choice as a 2, you can see that again the status of that book is become available. Okay, so this way we can perform all these operations, and here you can see that data we are able to see in the format because we have used the format method. And here if you can see this, all this text like ID, title, author, publisher and status is displayed in some other colors. Okay, so that also we are going to see how we can change the color of the text. Okay, now let's understand how we have created this application. Okay, so very first let's see the project structure. So this is simple Java project we have created. How we can create the simple Java project? You just have to go to this file, new, then project. So here just click on the next, and here you have to give some project name and then click on the finish. Okay, so this is the procedure to create the project in Java. Now here we have created this book management app project. Okay, and in this source folder we have these classes and the interfaces. Okay, now let's see. Very first, this book is our Pojo class. Okay, so in this book class we have all the details like book ID, then title, author of the book, then publisher and the status of the book. Okay, after that we have created the constructor here, and then all the getter and setters for each and every field. At last we have created the toString method. Okay, so all these things you don't have to write manually, you just have to use the generate here command n, and then here you have the options to create all these constructor, toString and getter setter methods automatically. Okay, so if you want to create the constructor, you just click on the constructor and select all the fields or the fields which you want to add in your constructor. Okay, and if you click on the OK, automatically the constructor will be created here. Okay, so this way we can create our Pojo class. Here nothing is logical, you just have to write the fields, then the default constructor, parameterized constructor and the getter setter for each and every field. At last we will use the toString method so that our data we will see in the readable format. Okay, after that let's go to our main class. So this main class is having the main method. Okay, so whenever we are running our application, very first thing we will see the welcome message and the menu of our application. Okay, so for that we have used the do while loop. If you can see here, this is the do loop and this is the while loop. Inside the do loop we have very first message as welcome to book management application. Okay, and these are the menu or the operations which we are going to perform here. Okay, very first one is to add the book, then show all books. Likewise we have these 6 operations, and after that we will ask user to enter the choice. Okay, so for that here we have written this system.out.println statement, and then here we will get the input from the user. Okay, so here we are going to use the switch case for each and every operation. So here we will be having a 6 cases for the 6 operation. Very first case is to add a book. So here we have used service.addBook. So this service is the, if you go to here, so this service is the object of the book service interface. Okay, if we go to book service interface, this interface contain these 5 operations. Okay, so add book method, then show all books, show all available books, then borrow a book and return book. You can add any other methods here. Then same thing you have to implement in your implementation class as well. So this is the book service implementation class. Okay, so this is implementing the book service interface. Okay, so if we go to the interface, we have the first method as a add book. Now let's see what is the logic we have written inside the add book. Okay, so see here, this is our add book method. So here we have written the all the details of the book, like book ID, author, title and year. Okay, so whenever we are entering the book detail, we have to validate that as well. For that we have written one more class validator here, and inside this validator class we have written the separate methods to validate the entered detail. Like if user is entering the ID, book ID, that book ID should be in digits only. It should not contain any characters or the special symbols. So that validation we have written inside this validator class. Okay, so that's why in this implementation class we have created the object of the validator class this way. Validator is equal to new validator, and using this object we can access all the methods which are written in the validator class. Okay, so if we go to the first method, which is to add a book, so see here what we have done here, string book id, then validator dot validate id. So if we go to this validate id method, here we have written the logic for the validation. So very first we will ask user to enter a book id. Then as soon as user enter a book id, here we have used the pattern class. Okay, so see here at line number 7 we have written private static pattern id pattern, and this pattern have the compile method where we have written this pattern like this id should be digit and it should contain any 1 to 4 digits. Okay, so here we will write if condition that if entered input means this book id, if that book id is not matching with the pattern you have mentioned above, then you can give the message that sorry, please enter a valid book id. Okay, otherwise you can break, and after this while you can just return the book id. Okay, so this red is we have written to show this message in the red color, and if you go above, see here this is the code for the for displaying the text in the red color. Okay, so there are different colors and different color codes which we can use. So this is for the red one, and this is to reset back. If we are not resetting, then this all the messages should be displayed in the red color. Okay, so that's why here I have written like red at a first, then the message, and at last we have written as a reset. Okay, so this way we can validate the book id. Now same way we have to validate the author and title and the publisher as well. So let's see the validation first. Here for the author and title also we have mentioned the pattern that the author and title should contain only characters and the space. It should not contain any digits, so that's why this should be the pattern here. And for the year as well we have written the pattern that year should be any 4 digits. Okay, so it will not allow the 1 digit, 2, 3 or any digit which is more than 4. Okay, so here this is the method we have written to validate the author and title. Okay, this is the while loop. So here we have written the same method to validate author and title. That's why this if else condition we have written like if the input is a parameter which we are going to pass whenever we are calling this validate author title method. Okay, so if this input is a title, then user will see the message enter title. If the input is author or other than title, then it should give the message as enter author. Okay, so here we will get the result means whatever input user is entering, and then if that input means if user entered the author name or the title of the book, then here we have to check the pattern. Okay, So here if this entered the title or the author is not matching with the conditions or the validation which we have written, then we will again give the message that please enter a valid author or the title. Okay, otherwise we will come out of the loop and return the result. Same way we have performed the validation for the year as well. This is exactly the same way. So very first just we have to enter the year, then we have to match with our pattern. If it is not matching, we will display the message, otherwise we will just return the year. Okay, so this way we can write the validations in the separate validator class. Then in the book implementation class, here we will get the book id, author, title and year. And at the first, if we are adding any book to your library, then the status of that book by default will be available. Okay, and if someone is borrowing that book, that time the status of book will automatically become not available. Okay, so here I am passing available whenever you are adding the book. Okay, so here we have created the list of the book, and inside this list of book we are going to add all the book details. As soon as you enter all the details, then you will see one message, book added successfully, and this message you will able to see in the green color. So for that green we have the code here. So this is the code for the green color. Okay, so this way we can add the book. Now if we go to the main class, very first operation is to add the book. I hope you have understood the flow of adding the book. Now if we enter the application, so let's run the application and see. So very first one is to add the book. Okay, so enter the one, and if we are entering the id in the character, it will give the message. Okay, so let's enter the valid book id, then author, PQR, and the title, let's keep it as Java. Publisher, let's keep it 2022. Okay, so see here we are able to see book added successfully message. Okay, so now we are done with the first operation to add a book. The second one is to show all the books. Okay, so to show all the books, what we have to do, very first in our main class we have to go to the case 2 and we have to call the show all books method. So this show all books method is available in our book service interface. Also we have implemented this in our implementation class. Okay, so in this implementation class what we have to do, we have to take all the books from the list of the book. So see here, this is our list of book. So in these books we have all the book details. So just we have to write the for loop this way, like for book, this is the list of the books. We are going to take all the books one by one and just we are going to print the book details. Okay, so here for printing the book details, here we have used the format method. Okay, to format, very first we have used this, like all the like book id, then the title, author, all the fields are the string type. So we have written this way and we have printed all the details. Okay, now this is to show all books. So see here we have taken one flag as well. So initially this flag is false. If you have any book in your library, then that flag will become the true. And if you don't have any books in your library and someone is entering a choice as a 2, that time you will get a message that there are no books available in the library. Okay, so for this purpose we have used this flag variable, and accordingly we can display the messages. Okay, so this is to show all the books. Now the third operation is to show all available books. Available books means what? If you have so many books in your library, but Some books are already borrowed by the student and some books are available which any user can borrow. So that books will be the available books. Okay, so when you enter choice as a 3, that time you will see only available books, not all books. Okay. So here the logic is same. You just have to write the for loop, and inside this for loop only changes this if condition. So in this if condition you will check that if book.getStatus is available, then only show the details, otherwise don't show that book details. Okay. So same thing here also we have used the flag just to check that is there any available book available or available in your library or not. If there is no book, then you will see this message. Okay. Then to borrow a book. To borrow a book, the status of the book should be available. Okay. So for that, here very first we will ask user to enter a book ID which they want to borrow. So here we have written book ID, and this book ID we will validate through this validator method validate ID. Okay. Now we have to take all the books one by one and we have to check that the entered book ID is available in our library or not. So for that we have written book.getID dot equals book id, means whatever book id is entered, is that book id is matching with the our book id from the library. Okay, if the both the book ids are matching, then we will come inside this if condition. There is one more condition that if your book status is available, then only you can borrow the book, otherwise you cannot borrow. Okay, so that two conditions are written in this if condition, and after that once that book is available in your library, then you will see the message book borrowed successfully. Okay, and as soon as you borrowed the book, automatically we are going to set the status of that book to not available, because that book is borrowed and that is not available to borrow for the further students. Okay, so that's why we will set the status as a not available, and then whatever will be that book details we are just printing here. Okay, so this is the logic to borrow the book. I hope you understand the logic. After that, to return a book, we have the same logic, like we just check here if means we will ask user to enter the book id. As soon as user enter the book id, then we will see that is that book available in our library. Also we have to check that is the status of that book is not available, means available book is already in your library, and how can that book will be returned. Okay, if that book is borrowed by some students, then only that student can return that book. So that's why we have added this not available status condition as well, and if this both the conditions are satisfied, then only you can return that book. And as soon as you return the book, you will see this message book returned successfully, and then again the status of that book will become the available from the not available, because you returned the book, that book is in your library, and now any other student can borrow that book. Okay, and then you will see the message or the details of that book. Okay, so this way you can perform all the operations in your book management application. Now let's run this application and debug. I will show with the debugging so that you can understand. So here let's keep the pointers. In the main, just keep this debug pointers for all the cases. And in the implementation class as well, we have to keep this debug points in every method so that we can understand how the flow is going. So here also I will keep one point. show all books and add book. Okay, now let's uh, okay, now first we are able to see that this is our menu. Okay, now enter the choice as a 1. So one choice is to add a book. Okay, now see here our debug come here at line number 23. So service dot add book. Okay, now if we do the F8, then it will go to add book method inside this implementation class. Okay, now here we have to enter the book ID. So see here we are getting the message enter a book ID. Okay, now if we enter book ID as a 12, it will ask to enter the author. Now let's enter the author as James, then F8, then title will be Java, F8, publish year will be 2020. Okay, now see here if we do the F8, see here all the book details will be available here. See, if I click here, you can see that ID is 12, title James, author Java, publisher 2020, and status is available. Okay, now in the line number 24 we are adding all these details into our list of the book. Okay, now let's do the F8. Now we will see the message book added successfully. See the flow. See here we got the message now. Okay, now let's do the F8. It will come here. Now break. Again this loop will execute. Again we will see the menu and we have to enter the choice. So here let's enter the choice as a 2 and F8. So it will see here the choice is 2. It will go to show all books. Then again it will come to show all books method in the implementation class. So currently the flag is false. So it will come here. Then this for loop will execute and currently in these books we have only one book added. So size is 1. Okay. Now if we do F8 here. So see, once we come inside this for loop, then this flag will be true. Otherwise, this flag will be false. Okay. Now it will come here. Change the flag from false to true. Then it will come outside. See here. We can see all the book details. Okay. The same way we can debug further. Again we can enter the choice as a 3. So it will show all the available books. So currently we have like only one book. So it will show only one book. Okay. So just do the F8. It will go and it will show the available books. Okay. Now if we do the F8 again. So here we can see the menu and now let's enter the choice as a borrow book. Okay, so if we enter choice as a 4 and do the F8, it will go in the implementation class and here it will ask to enter a book ID. Okay, now if we enter book ID something like this, then it will give the message please enter valid book ID. So here we have to enter the book ID which is available in your library and which you can borrow, means the status of that book should be available. Okay, so currently we have this 12 as a book ID and the status is available, so we can borrow this book. So let's enter the book ID as a 12 here. So see here, now let's enter the F8, F8, see book.getID. So if you evaluate this, here if you evaluate this, see what is the value here as a 12. Okay, so here we have used the equals method and this book ID is also 12. So 12 to book.getID dot equals book ID. So first condition is true. Okay, then the second condition is to check the status of the book. If we evaluate this, then you can see that the value of the status is also available. Okay, so both the conditions are matching, so it will come inside the if. Then the flag value was false, now it will become true. If we do F8, see here the flag value became true now. Then it will print in the green that book borrowed successfully. Okay, so see here you will see the message book borrowed successfully. After that, immediately you can see all the details of that book. Okay, so if we do F8, we can see all the book details. So see here borrowed book details, and this is the ID, title, author, publisher, all the details will be here. So borrow book is done. Now if we come here, now only we have to return the book. Okay, so see here menu is displayed again. It will ask to enter a choice. So here we have to enter a choice as a 5 so that we can return that book. Okay, so see here the choice is 5 now. It will go to this service.return book. Then again it will come to the implementation class. So for the return book also the conditions are like that book should be available and the status of that book will be not available, so that you can return that. Okay, now see here it is asking to enter a book ID. Now if you enter some 12 is a book ID which we can return, but just enter here a book ID as a 1. So that one book ID is not available in your library. Now see what happened. Okay, see here it will come inside this for loop, and here it will check that is that book is available or not. So see here that if condition is not satisfied, so it came out of this, and here the flag is false only, because if the condition is true, if this condition is true, then only this flag is becoming true, otherwise the flag will be false. And now this condition is not satisfied, so because see here the book.getID, if we evaluate that, this book.getID, okay, now we are at the next line, so that's why it is not recognizing, but book.getID will be 1. Okay, sorry, book.getID means the 12 is our book ID which is available, okay, in this list of books, but we have entered the book ID as a 1, so this condition is not matching, that's why this if condition will be failed, and now it is out of this if condition, and here the flag is false. Okay, so that's why it will come here, this condition will be true, and then we can see this message that we cannot return this book. Okay, so see here if I do F8, it will see that is the flag value is false, yes, so it will display this message. See, we cannot return this book. Okay, now if we do F8 again, we can see the menu, and this time we will enter the choice as a 5, and then we will enter the correct book ID. Okay, so here let's enter the book ID as a 12. So now see here the flag is become true now. Okay, now it will come here, set the status as available, it will return this book, display all the book details. Okay, so this is the flow of book management application. I hope you have understood all the details. Okay, so we have covered all the 5 operations. Also we have covered how we can use the pattern class. So this is the validator class. In this validator class we have used these patterns for the ID validation, then author and title validation, and for the publisher validation. Okay, and in the book service implementation class Here when we are showing all the book details, that time we have used this format method, so that our book details should be displayed in some format. Okay, and to display the text or the messages in different colors, we have used the color codes. So this way we have covered all the 4 points we have mentioned in the start that we are going to cover in this video, and I hope you have understood all the points. If you have any questions, you can ask in the comment section, and I will attach the link in the description for the source code as well, so that you can cross verify your code. Okay, so thank you for watching. If you like this video, please share with your friends and don't forget to subscribe the channel. Thank you.